And what we're going to do today is just to give you a little bit of insight into some of the things that we're facing with regards to social media at Microsoft, both from an internal point of view and also what we're doing externally. Hopefully share a few examples and learn a little bit from each other as well.
And you will see a lot of similarities, what we heard just now from the Lego. And even the Darth Vader will be a part of it. But one particular similarity that we would love to have the guys that we work with to be hobbyists on Microsoft. How many hobbyists on Microsoft you know? It's a little bit different story, right? They worked for business. And my particular job is to work with IT professionals. And they building IT systems with a little bit more complicated Lego blocks, right? It's Windows Server, SQL Server. It's a little bit more complicated story, but the principles will be very much the same, and you will see that.
So I'm working on the guys on the consumer and the business side of things, and Renat's basically working on the guys that create the stuff that we click on, all right? So marketing as we knew it, typically, you had the 4 Ps, and we were amplifying our message with a sort of a megaphone and trying to herd our audience down a particular way. But the way it's working now, Renat's community manager, he's got these different aspects here. It's not quite the same story. Digital has really transformed the way we're doing marketing now. So it's become, from what we used to have, which was broadcasting a generic advertising message to the mass market, to becoming more of a targeted narrowcasting marketing through digital channels, to diverse segmented marketplaces, to where we're heading to, which is uniquely tailored, ongoing relationships with individual consumers. So it really has teaching us to stop shouting at our customers and really starting to having a conversation, starting out conversing. And conversation is, as I'm sure you know, really, really important now. It's very much what the brand is. It's the sum of all the conversations that are happening out there, and that is effectively what the brand is. There's no such really thing as a strong brand or a poor brand without people's perceptions of what's actually happening. And we've also learned that transparency, it's no longer optional. It's absolutely essential to the way we're doing marketing now. And it's vital to the way we're actually generating our revenue, building customer loyalty and affinity. So when it boils down to the social media side of things, it's effectively the same conversations we were talking about, but social media is those people having those conversations online. The consumer, as I just showed you that equation, consumer is so important to the actual overall equation we were looking at. They're effectively in control of the brand now. So we have to be very careful in terms of what we're doing, in terms of listening to the dialogue that's actually going on out there.
One little comment over here for the technical professionals. Again, the similarity with the previous presentation, I would like to build it on the great job that Lego Caligula has done. So the influencers, in our case, it's IT pros and developers, because when you will be buying your next PC, you will probably ask the guy who knows about that, right? And those guys, IT pros and developers, they are prosumers. They will consume your products, and they will be not hesitating to publish their positive or negative feedback online. So for us, they are the crucial influencers, and they are the enthusiasts. We need to work with them separately.
So what it boils down to for us is that social media, it isn't in a silo. It doesn't live in a silo. Real-time conversations are happening every day, and they're defining our brand and your brands. But what you can actually do is harness those messages, those communications. You can monitor them, and you can measure them to actually help define some really interesting conversations across multiple channels.
So very simple. That's how it was before. Right? So we just channeled our audience wherever it was through the standard marketing funnel, getting them through paid and owned medias, being like pushing some advertising, the rockets, and then operating some our own communication channels. For now, it's a little bit more complicated, at least on the developer and IT pro side. The funnel, how they go to the purchasing decision is far different. I can speak firsthand from the technical audience, and IT pros and developers, they are influenced through all this marketing funnel. Let me give you an example. The little startup, probably future Facebook, will be selecting their platform, even their hardware, on which they're going to build their next solution. In 38%, it will be the Twitter post from a colleague. They're actually reading this. They're asking for advice on a Twitter, and a Twitter can make the decision for the future of the IT strategy of a little company. So it's immediately, impressively important. Now we're talking more and more about earned parts of our media, because, okay, owned is us. Microsoft.com is still a very popular resource. I'm sure at some point of time you've been there. downloading something. But paid, also important, we're investing money into campaigns. But earned, getting more and more important for us.
Okay. What it's boiling down to also for us now is that effectively with the availability of social media, both for our audiences and our internal employees, is that we're all marketers. So everybody in the organization has to have a marketing hat to some degree. And what that basically means is a big change in the way the organization is thinking about marketing and the way the marketing team members themselves are positioned within the organization. And again, to the point that we heard earlier on from Lars about creating engagements and not just campaigns, we've actually moved significantly in the last 12 months within Microsoft and MEA away from having marketing campaigns that burn very, very brightly, burn the budget and have a lot of attention and then basically disappear. We're moving much more towards having these ongoing, actually Renat's area, when he's looking after developers and IT pros, is a very well-oiled machine in this respect. But we're doing the same thing now for our audiences for SMB and enterprise as well. So creating evergreen environments where what would technically be the campaigns would sit within and have a longer life. And as a technology company, we have an advantage. We know we finally got the message that social media is very, very important. We're actually building it into our very own products. So if you're familiar with Xbox Connect, you can socialize very, very quickly your gaming experience through the available social channels.
Like again, it's the experience of a big company. Lego, ourselves, pretty much known big brands, and we can afford to do so. We even ran for this thing like Fuse Labs. We integrated Facebook experiences into our Office web apps application. So who has the Facebook accounts? Just raise your hand. Good, thanks. Who knows that you can get for free Office, the Excel, the PowerPoints, zero money, no paying anything? Good, one person. Just go online to docs.com. It's made by Fuse Labs, and Office web apps is for you for free. Just out of curiosity. But this is, again, can be afforded by the big guys like Microsoft, Lego, our friends from Google. Anyone? Anyone? Huh? Yes? Google? Nah, no competitors on the stage. Okay. Go ahead.
And we're also integrating social into everything we're doing. So it seems like an obvious thing to do, but until recently, you had to prompt our marketers to make sure they're including the share functionality into the sites that we're building and so on. Now, when I first started in this role about a year and a half ago in Dubai, social media was a little bit misunderstood. In fact, I was trying to promote it quite heavily in terms of how we should be looking at it. Then something happened in January. We had a few revolutions. Suddenly, everybody wanted to do social media. And people were jumping straight to the tactical side of things. So we were trying to roll out internally what our sort of approach would be. And this is it, basically. So we had to look at the social activities first amongst the people, both our own and the audience. We need to define what our objectives are. So what is it we actually want to accomplish before we jump into the sort of social area. Have a very clear strategy as how these relationships with customers will change. And only then we worry about the technology, the tools, and the tactics we'll be using, and deciding what social technologies will we actually be embarking on. And going back to Renat's point earlier about the types of media that we're operating in, again, at Microsoft, we've had a bit of a change in the way we're approaching this. It used to be that we would jump straight into the paid media to try and get our message across. But we're very much now maximizing what we're doing on our own network. So Microsoft.com, all the other properties that we actually own. We're using social very much as a vehicle to amplify those messages and stimulate. And then we're looking at, only then we're looking at paid to actually try and do something a little bit more innovative and get the message out there. But these three areas are still very, very important, but the sequence that we're approaching them in has been turned around in our organization. And to give you a bit of insight in some of the work that I had to do to get the teams on board, it was by no means understood completely what social actually was or what was actually going on within the organization. Microsoft MEA, Middle East and Africa, we look after 8 subsidiaries. There's something like over 80 countries in that we're having direct contact with, and multiply that with a number of marketers that are sitting in each of the different areas. And ours is a head office role. So the first thing I had to do was do an audit, capturing the information in terms of what it is you're doing, what are the channels, who owns it, how long has it been running, how many followers or whatever metrics you're using to measure its success. And even things like the username and password. From an internal point of view, we needed to capture that at a central level so that we had the ability to help them if anything should go wrong. Microsoft has quite a lot of guidelines coming from our corporate headquarters at Redmond in the US. There's a plethora of information from our legal team. There's some stuff from our digital marketing team. There's some stuff from Renat's area. I try to consolidate all that information and share that with the audience as well. So we had to socialize that. We set up a council, so we had some people from our PR team, from Renat's team and so on. We're still forming that. And we identified our champions, the single points of contact around the region. We also activated our listening program. So we have active listening going on a real-time basis now, and we report on that regularly. And we have a communications cadence. Of course, what I found was when I communicated this information to the teams, it was very well received, but then you present the deck and everybody looks at it and then they forget about it. So one of the things we had to do was try and make it really easy for our internal audience, treat them like customers as well, to actually understand what actually, how they can navigate through social. So we came up with an infographic internally that basically describes all the different aspects of social media that they would go through. And we identified quite a lot of things that already existed. I didn't have to create anything from scratch. We knew a lot of this stuff already. But there were some things where they didn't have any support on. So if you look at things like item number 10, it says roadside assistance. What do you do if something goes wrong? So what if your Facebook site gets hacked? And it does happen. It happens at a corporate level. But we had a situation where the Morocco Facebook site was hacked. They didn't tell anyone about it, tried to fix it, and then they had to contact me at the end of the week to try and sort it out. So to avoid those kind of situations, we put together a set of guidelines where we had all these things already covered. But then I also had guidelines as to how do you create your avatar, how do you make sure your site is consistent. So for those of you working in organizations that have more than one office and more than one person looking after this, it's very important to have an idea that your team can refer to guidelines that can actually help them go in the right direction.
So talking about the simplification, that's pretty much important. I don't want to look from Microsoft as a global company anymore. Let's look at the very simple practice that anyone can implement, and that's what we did over here. So our problem was very simple. We didn't have enough of content in the local language. We didn't have localization process for some smaller African countries or whatever. We simply didn't. What we could do, we could build something from scratch, we could build another strategy and so on. But studying from with the Faiz help and the strategy, the analysis and audits was the first thing, and we discovered that the conversations were already happening. And that was the biggest discovery for us. We just found out that a few of our employees were doing an amazing job on their own blogs. Now, really, Microsoft is not like Apple or other interesting company that forbid blogging. No, we're very transparent and we actually encourage people to do so. But what we did with the audit, we found out who are the real heroes are, and we just scale it up. What we did, we provide them a separate platform on blogs.technet.com and blogs.msdn.com to blog about it, available only to Microsoft employees, that's one. And we put together a very simple rewarding mechanics behind that, saying if you're the most popular blogger for this region and working for Microsoft, you will be able to speak at some international conferences, just increase your visibility, putting this that simple. It worked. It worked pretty well. You do have ambassadors in your company. Your basic options are two. Shut down their internet and saying, no, our PR department taking care about everything, and we stop all our social media activities. Or you can ride the wave and encourage those guys, give them the guidance, simplified one. They do have their daily jobs. They're not working for your marketing departments. I will go to specific examples on Middle East and Africa for Microsoft, but usually those guys doing their daily job, and they also share some information about the job. They will not be able to read 40 pages guideline on social media. They won't. More than that, they will hate you if you will push them to read that. On our case, we just found out few people. Let me get one name. Shiaz Abdullah, the guy working in Qatar. He's a partner technology advisor. What the guy does on his daily job, he sells to our partners, together with our partners. It's 100% consuming work, tough one, with a big quota on him, revenue behind. But he's so much enthusiastic about Microsoft technology. He runs his own blog, microsoftnow.com, and it's one of the most popular blogs in the region. That's simple as that. Of course, it goes to different scale. We do have other guys who are running also some social media engagements. And they also deserve some good words in their address saying thank you from the company. It works. What we did with those guys who would like to contribute but don't have capacity to do it on their own, we created as simple as like group blogging. We do have two very interesting teams of people. Center of Expertise, it's a group of people sitting in Cairo and doing the pre-sales work across the region. Very busy guys with the technology work, but what we told them, like, okay, this is the platform where you can share your technical experience with the audience. That's it. And Microsoft Consulting Services. Those guys are not only busy, but they're also very expensive. If you would like to buy Microsoft Consulting Services, I'm not selling this now. I'm just saying, yes, it's a great value for the IT in the company, but it's really expensive. In the same time, we told them, how about you guys share the most important experiences, the most interesting findings on the blog? That's it. Nothing else we done. Those 3 blogs are the most popular 3 Microsoft blogs related to Middle East and Africa. 0 investment except bringing those guys to some conferences. And those conferences more or less Microsoft internal. So for us, it's very little money. For your case, it could be your employee, your ambassadors, or someone related to the company who already doing that. And what I would encourage to think about, rather creating something new from scratch, reinvent the wheel, just grab the guy if he's on the way to be a hero and create a hero from him. That's totally beneficial for both parties.
So to give you an example of some of the work we're doing in terms of planning our digital marketing and how social fits into it, we always start off with an editorial calendar. So we have a clear idea as to what's happening in a particular time frame, and this will depend on the audience you're looking at and whether it's consumer or business. So we mark on there some key significant things. In this example, we've got, you can't quite see, but underneath it talks about the launch of a particular Connect product, April Fool's Day, marathons, Earth Day, and so on and so forth. Even got on there William and Kate's first anniversary, if that's relevant for anyone. And then we have an idea as to what's going to be happening in terms of the social calendar, whether we're going to be sharing a photo, a case study, top tip, asking a question, or maybe even an offer and a discount ready for the weekend shopping. To give you an example, here's an event that Renat and I were both at just a couple of weeks ago. We launched, the Xbox team launched Connect Star Wars. It was a relatively small press event, about 20 people attended. Darth Vader was there. It did everything the press event was supposed to do. It talked about the product, showed a few demonstrations, allowed the press to have hands-on experience with what actually was going on. We also created some social objects whenever we do anything like this, something that we can actually form opinions on, agree, disagree, basically something to generate some conversations about. This is not a complete list by any means, but you can be things like infographics, which tend to do very well, anything to do with reports, research, public information you can share. Even unboxings prove to be very popular when it comes to things like videos on YouTube. In this particular instance, to launch this particular Star Wars game, we took a series of photographs. So Darth Vader has unveiled a gallery at this press event. There was about 10 pictures of him actually appearing alongside some very well-known landmarks in Dubai. So there's a couple here I can share with you. Not every day you see Darth Vader in the creek. What we did there was obviously include that onto our Facebook site so that we actually commercialized that in a way, or sort of socialized that to actually have a caption competition. Now, this was the only cost that was involved, getting those pictures actually photographed and artworked up. And if you look carefully at the detail, there's some nice Star Wars details for the fans in the background. Now, whenever we do anything like this, seeding that content is very important, and some of these elements played a part in what we were doing here. So we worked with our media partners, we communicated directly to some key influencers, bloggers, even the staff, as Renat was saying, were very much advocates in communicating this in their own social channels. All of this was going into that ring, if you like, of creating mass discovery and amplifying that social sharing. So together with the work we were doing in social and PR, the very next day we had front page coverage on the Gulf News business section. Force.net, a major Star Wars fan site, actually the #1 fan site, gave us some coverage. A huge number of tweets. The Facebook page went from about 8,000 to 15,000 followers. So this is all happening within the space of a couple of days as we're moving forwards. Now, this is the thought that was actually going into all of this as well, is that online is actually liberating consumers from the social shackles that bind them in the real world. But what that means is these dialogues are happening regardless. That wasn't me. Now, the monitoring that goes on to let us know what's actually happening is very, very important. So if you haven't already done this, you should start thinking about the monitoring that you're doing. We are monitoring things. Just very recently, we launched Windows 8 Consumer Preview. We've launched Office 365 and so on and so forth. By having this ongoing monitoring, we're able to track the sort of sentiment as it happens over a period of a few days just to see how things are actually changing. For the Windows 8 consumer preview, we're able to see how there were some doubters at the beginning, how they changed into a little bit more knowledgeable, and actually becoming advocates and fans by the end of that week. It was very interesting to see that progress just over the period of a week. By having that monitoring, of course, we are able to create something along the lines of a crisis management system as well. I mentioned earlier about sites getting hacked, but it's not just hacking. It could be negatives, comments, all that kind of stuff as well. So we had to have very clear executive support within the organization across Middle East and Africa, identify what those hot channels are, together with this 24/7 monitoring, and have assigned owners that would actually act and react to anything that was actually happening in that environment. And this is along the lines of sometimes responding directly, or sometimes passing it on to a member of the customer services team. So it just needs to be planned and organized, and everybody needs to know what the correct plan of action is. So just to come towards the wrap-up of this, the great social media marketing that we're working on, and you guys are working on, all has something in common. It has to be planned, it has to be deliberate, you have to know what you're doing, and it's educational, not just for the users, but for us. We are learning from this every single day. We're not claiming to be experts by any stretch of the imagination, but you need to know what your consumers are doing and what they're thinking about. So in order to do that as marketers, you have to understand the digital society that we're working in, the social psychology that we're operating in as well, the marketer's role, if you're a marketer, what your role is in there, and what you have to do. And you have to do it well. It's not easy, it's not magic, but it's really, really worth it.
Just some personal learnings. Probably I will leave you with this as the final thing for our conversation tonight. We learned a lot on the social media journey. We just enabled our people. We trusted our people. It was kind of a leap of faith in some sorts. We enabled those guys to tell the truth, absolute, with no PR tweaking around that, just saying, share your personal experience. Learned a lot from this exercise, very interesting one, how to foster this discussion with the community. And just one thing to remember, it is, the conversations are happening online, the conversations are there, and what you can do, just be sure that what happens with your brand online really stays there in a good shape. This is something that I brought very recently from a trip from Beirut. This is a lovely quote, and goes to Microsoft. And it is, if you spoiled someone's experience, be sure the guy will pop up next day somewhere. If you pleased someone, create a hero out of the guy. He will be advocate for your brands. I'm not saying it's a rocket science that we shared with you. It might with the structured approach with Kaligo Faiz, who was before it. We are all learning this thing, but those basics need to be maintained in a very well shape. Thank you. Any questions? No. The question was if I'm ready to share it. Any questions?
So when you trusted your stuff with engaging with your audience, did anything go wrong, or was it all right? Is because of your colleagues that were, understanding how it's supposed to be? Because a lot of companies, they have to involve PR teams, and so nothing bad goes out.
I understand what your question is about. The trust is ultimately important one. And yes, there are some legal implications even, like this thick LCA guidelines, how you're going to deal with this thing. Yes, they do exist. We educate our people about it. But first of all, we trust that we hire good people. And if they do have a place within Microsoft, they deserve to be trusted, right? Non-discussable. There were some, of course, issues with the guys who are doing something that is not that much aligned with the guidelines. But it's not because of the guidelines, it's just because it's not matching with the common sense at first place. Because the judgment here is the first place. If there is a Microsoft confidential sign on the email, you do not copy-paste from it. If you do, you expect some problems for yourself and for your company. Yes, answering your question very honestly, there were a couple of cases of very stupid sharing online, fixed, also with the people, fixed. But it was the breaking not of the LCA guidelines, it was a break of the common sense at first place. And I do believe our employees should have it.
Great. Thank you very much from Microsoft.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.